You ever stop and think about how your body stays so, clean on the inside, with all the millions of things it's doing every second? Well, it's definitely not magic. There's this incredibly sophisticated, non-stop cleanup crew hard at work. And today, we are pulling back the curtain on this biological marvel, the excretory system. Let's just dive right in with a pretty wild fact. Right now, as you're listening to this, every single one of your trillions of cells is busy working, keeping you alive. But here's the catch. All that work creates a constant stream of toxic waste. So the big question is, how are you not being poisoned from the inside out?
So, here's our game plan. We're going to follow the journey of that waste. First, we'll look at why it's such a problem in the first place. Then we'll take a tour of the kidney's amazing filtration factory. After that, we'll break down the 3-step process for making urine, trace its path out of the body, and finally, meet some of the other organs that lend a helping hand.
All right, first things first. Why is all this metabolic waste so dangerous? And why is having a dedicated cleanup crew not just helpful, but absolutely essential for us to survive?
The official name for the process we're talking about is excretion. And it's not just about getting rid of stuff. It's specifically about removing the waste products from your metabolism. All those chemical reactions happening inside your cells. A good way to think about it is like the exhaust coming out of a car's engine.
Now here's something that people get mixed up all the time. It's super important to know the difference between excretion and egestion, which is what we usually call, pooping. Egestion is just getting rid of undigested food that never actually made it inside your body's cells. Excretion, on the other hand, deals with the waste that was made inside the cells. Totally different jobs. And here's why this whole system is so critical. The number one waste product our cells make is ammonia, and let me tell you, that stuff is seriously toxic. So to handle this threat, our body has this amazing detoxification center, the liver. It grabs that dangerous ammonia and, like a master chemist, converts it into a much safer compound called urea, which can then travel through our blood without causing any harm.
So where does all that blood loaded with urea go to get scrubbed clean? Well, that brings us to the main event, the incredible filtration factory we call the kidneys.
Yep, you've got 2 of these amazing organs. They're kind of a reddish-brown color, shaped like a bean, and each one is about the size of your fist. They're tucked away safely just below your rib cage, and they are, without a doubt, the master filters of your entire body.
But the real magic? It happens on a scale you can't even see. Get this, inside each of your kidneys, there are over 1 million microscopic filtering units called nephrons. That's over 2 million tiny factories all working together to clean your blood. The scale of it is just mind-boggling.
And the amount of work they do is just staggering. Every single day, your kidneys filter around 150 quarts of blood. To put that into perspective, your entire blood supply gets a full cleaning dozens and dozens of times a day. It's just non-stop work to keep everything perfectly balanced.
Okay, so how do these millions of tiny nephrons actually turn dirty blood into urine? Well, it all comes down to this beautifully efficient 3-step process that happens on a microscopic assembly line.
It all breaks down into 3 main stages. First, there's filtration, where a bunch of stuff gets pushed out of the blood. Then comes reabsorption, where your body smartly takes back all the good stuff. And finally, there's secretion, which is like the final cleanup step.
So, step 1, filtration. This happens in a tiny little ball of blood vessels called the glomerulus. Under high pressure, blood gets forced through what is basically a superfine sieve. All the small stuff, like water, salts, glucose, and of course urea, get squeezed out. But the big things, like proteins and blood cells, are too large to fit through, so they stay behind in the blood. Now check out the sheer scale of this. Your kidneys produce a whopping 180 liters. That's nearly 48 gallons of this initial filtrate every day. But we only end up excreting about 1.5 liters of urine. So what on earth happens to the other 99%?
Well, that brings us to the absolutely crucial second step, reabsorption. As all that filtrate flows through the nephron's long tube, your body works incredibly hard to take back almost all of the water, plus all the vital nutrients like glucose and salts that it just can't afford to lose. It's a massive and very smart recovery operation.
And the final touch is step 3, secretion. You can think of this as the last quality control check. The walls of the tubule actively pull any leftover waste products, like extra potassium or hydrogen ions, out of the blood and dump them into the filtrate. And at the end of this step, that fluid can officially be called urine.
So the urine is made.
Now it's got to go somewhere, right? Let's follow it on its final journey along the exit pathway.
From the kidneys, urine flows down two muscular tubes called the ureters. They actually push the urine along down to the bladder, which is basically a stretchy, muscular storage tank. Then, when the time is right, the urine is finally released from the body through one last tube called the urethra.
And this whole process actually has a fancy scientific name: micturition. It's not just a passive drain, it's an active reflex. As your bladder fills up with urine, its walls stretch. Receptors in the wall send a signal to your central nervous system, which then sends a message back, giving the command for the muscles to contract and let the urine out.
Now, while the kidneys are clearly the stars of the show, they aren't working completely alone in this bigger mission of excretion. So it's time to meet the rest of the cleanup crew. Think about it. Your lungs are constantly excreting a gaseous waste product, carbon dioxide, every single time you breathe out. We already met the liver, which is a champion at breaking down all sorts of toxins. And even your skin helps out by releasing sweat, which is mostly water and salt, but also has small amounts of urea in it.
This whole liquid-based system works fantastically for us humans, but what about other animals, especially ones that have to conserve every last drop of water to survive? How do they solve this same problem of getting rid of waste?
Well, the insect world has an incredibly elegant solution. Instead of kidneys, insects have these structures called Malpighian tubules. They convert their waste into something called uric acid, which requires very little water to get rid of, and then they excrete it as a thick paste. It's just a brilliant adaptation for survival.
So at the end of the day, whether we're talking about our own kidneys and lungs or an insect's clever tubules, the entire system is really dedicated to one core concept: homeostasis. It's all about maintaining that perfectly stable, finely tuned internal environment that life itself absolutely depends on.
This incredibly complex, silent system just works, tirelessly, 24/7, without you ever having to think about it. And it's just one of many systems like it that are keeping you in perfect balance. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other invisible miracles are happening inside you right at this very moment?